Hey, Noel, thanks for joining us today. As we're getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Yeah, Brian. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. This is so cool. I've been following you for a while, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I'm a recovering engineer, is what I call myself. My career started in engineering. I worked in aerospace for around 12 years, and found myself through that time getting closer and closer to wanting to be with the customer and solving the real challenges day to day. And that kind of led me into more of a sales oriented role. And over the last 2.5 years, I've been in full-fledged sales, in tech sales, in technology, and in tech leadership, in tech sales leadership. So I'm what I call a recovering engineer with a real interest in sales. And of course, the overlap there is that both engineers and salespeople are trying to help people solve problems, overcome challenges. So it's probably not as precarious of a career path as it initially sounds.
And did you like engineering, or did you wanted more social activity, more interaction?
Are you saying that engineers aren't very social, Brian?
Well, I mean, I was an engineer, so you kind of like Monday morning, you sit with your coffee. And I used to like a Monday morning. Oh, I got the keyboard and I can just type. No one's bothering me.
Yeah. Well, there certainly are days where that sounds pretty nice. But yeah, I think I definitely enjoy technology, but I also enjoy that interaction. You know, how does that technology translate into value and really help somebody, whether it's an individual or a business? So I think I do enjoy technology for sure. I don't see myself letting go of the technology element just yet, but the interaction is very important to me too, for sure.
Because I think the engineers that do make the leap into sales, like I did pre-sales first, we're helping the salespeople go with the customer. But when you go into sales, I think some of the structure of engineering, because it's all problem solving, right?
Right, absolutely. There's an art and a science to selling for sure. And the science part is about having discipline, a process, a methodology. And really, a lot of it is sort of based on data and insights you collect along the way. So I think there is a lot of overlap with the sort of culture of an engineer for sure.
And how about the people skills? Did you have that? Was that innate? Was that something that you had always grown up with? A big family or a lot of friends or just a social guy?
I think I naturally like to be with people, probably a little bit of an extrovert in that respect. And so, yeah, I think that was always there, bubbling away under the surface. And that certainly is something that helps you make that transition for sure.
And how was sales different than what you thought it was before you got into it? Because everyone kind of has these preconceived things that it's all smiling and wearing a nice suit and being
Right,
able to
right.
give a great presentation.
Yeah, I was definitely in that camp when I joined sales. That's my first sales role. I would be the guy polishing up my PowerPoint presentation, ready to go in and make the big pitch, and very quickly discovered there's a lot more to sales than being the guy with the big smile and the big presentation. Actually, we early on in my sales career, my sales director, the VP of sales, left the business. This is during the pandemic, and so I was sort of promoted to take the sales leadership role, and suddenly realized that there's a lot more to this than just the intuition and the personability element. And so we hired a sales coach who has been working with us for the last 2 years, and just an enormous amount of learning in really the deep knowledge and experience that's required to be an effective salesperson. There's a huge difference between someone who does a little bit of sales and is a really an elite salesperson. And I'm certainly on that journey today. I'm not there. I don't consider myself an elite salesperson, but I'm pursuing that journey.
And where do you see the gap there between where you are and where you want to be? What are the key hurdles that you see?
Great question. The first thing was knowing what does it take to be an elite salesperson? What are the behaviors? What is the art and science that you need to employ? I definitely know much more about that now than I did before. I didn't know what I didn't know. Now I know what I don't know. I think, which is a big first step, trust me. I think that the next thing, Brian, has been just living that every day. It's an incredibly, you get the most wonderfully rich experiences as a salesperson. You're out in the world, you're talking to different people, helping them solve different problems. It's a very immersive career, and it's wonderful. But in that respect, every day is different, every customer and every challenge is different. So it takes time to build the muscles, the repetition, and the behaviors that will provide the best outcome every time. And so I think for me, it's about continuing to practice and to adopt that methodology, and continue to work with a sales coach. Anyone who's trying to become an elite salesperson, I would strongly advocate having someone who is coaching you continuously, just like the best sports people in the world, the golfers who are playing in the Open Championship this weekend. Just before they go on the first tee, the last person they speak to is their coach. And it's not the swing coach, it's the sports psychologist, the head coach, that's going to get you in the right space, right? So it's an ongoing, continuing thing.
That's it. Because I tell reps, even if you talk to a tree about your deals, the verbalization about talking about the deal will help you come to the things that you should think about, but you don't want to think about.
That's so true. That's so true. I mean, in everyday life, I don't know about you, Brian, but if I'm going to make a big decision, whether it's buying something or whether it's making a career change, I have to sit down and talk to someone. And it could be my wife, it could be a friend at a bar, it could be my 7-year-old daughter, but just, verbalizing it, hearing the words come out of your own mouth and how they land is very helpful for sure.
And that's it, because, even most good therapists, they don't really tell you what to do. They just go, what do you think would happen if you did that? Or what will you think will happen if you don't do this?
Right, absolutely. And a therapist and a good salesperson are asking those key questions, right? And helping you understand, because you've got to get there in your own heart, as a prospect or as a customer, you've got to get there. And a good salesperson doesn't push you there, but they ask those great questions that you get there.
Focused. And what do you think is your strongest selling skill?
Ooh, that's a great question. Well, I would hope it is the ability to empathize with the prospect or customer. The theme that I keep coming back to in my sales coaching and in my day-to-day is just having the empathy to not assume I know what this person, this organization needs, and not assume I understand what might stop them moving forward. Like the phrase, "it's a no-brainer," is such a toxic term in sales. I mean, you hear it all the time. It's a no-brainer. Why wouldn't they pay for this solution? It's a no-brainer. And of course, there is no-brainers. That's a true. It doesn't matter whether you're on the way to work and stopping to buy a coffee or buying a new car or a house. There's always a thought process. There's no-brainer. And so for a customer, there's an enormous amount they have to consider and think through. And that's very true in the tech world. So over the last 2.5 years, I've been selling machine learning, AI, and technology, but I've not been selling it to technology companies. We're selling to manufacturers, industrial companies, people who don't live and breathe this world. So telling someone this is going to be a slam dunk, it's a no-brainer, when they're still trying to understand the technology, the methodology, how long it will take to receive that ROI. Empathy is something I believe very strongly in. It's something I keep coming back to. Empathize with the customer, the prospect, put yourself in their shoes. If you were in their seat, what would you be thinking right now?
Yeah. And I actually draw this out when I'm thinking through a deal, because if you're not thinking like them, you're thinking like you.
Right.
And that's where the no-brainer comes out, right? It's like, makes perfect logical sense.
Right.
Why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things we don't do that make perfectly good logical sense.
every day.
Right?
That's right.
Yeah, no one would eat a donut if we did the perfectly logical thing.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. I should have got up and gone to the gym this morning, but I didn't. It made perfect sense. I didn't do it. So yeah, there are no-brainers. That's a very true thing to come back to as a salesperson.
And do you have a particular, other than the coach, because that's definitely what a coach should do, is ask you, well, if you were the client, what would you do? What do you think they're going to be up against? Not technically, politically,
You're right, right. So
economically, the change.
yeah, yeah. Selling into organizations, B2B sales, which is primarily what I've been involved with, there's inevitably complexity, right? And the bigger the deal, the bigger the organization, the complexity just builds. And so it's very, very, very rarely one decision maker's decision. It's never that. And actually, they've got to sell internally within their own organization. They might even tell you it's a no-brainer. They might say, this is awesome, right? But their boss and their stakeholders and the community of people who have got to come with them may not have been involved with this conversation, may not be up to speed, may be in a very different headspace. So complex sales, B2B selling, it's more than just about putting that one person, getting that one person's buy-in and empathizing with them. How are they going to take this forward? They're now on your side of the table trying to sell back into their own organization, and they haven't had 4 years of sales training or 20 years of experience. This is the first time they've ever tried to do this. So empathy again and understanding what it takes for them to move forward is really important.
Right, because the second worst thing than us thinking it's a no-brainer is your champion thinking it's a no-brainer. Because they're not thinking about what what I call the gauntlet that they have to go through to get this done.
Quite right.
And you would think it's all logical, but it's not.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because a lot of those people are hearing about it for the very first time.
Right, right. And the word champion is maybe a little overused sometimes because a champion suggests that they are 100% bought in. They're the cheerleader. They're the person that's like, they're going to die on this hill with you, right? And a lot of people who we consider champions are really not empowered to be that champion, right? We're empowering them to be our champion, but the organization hasn't. They're really helping.
There's no position called champion in the company.
Right. So it's dangerous to sort of, again, that's a term that comes out a lot during sales coaching and training and account reviews is I'm talking to the champion. And it's worth understanding, what makes that person a champion, not to you, but to that organization. Is that the person that's held up and being given the right to just set a direction with a budget or to inform the budget owner exactly what to do? It's probably not. It's probably a nuance in there somewhere.
Well, because typically they're the user and have the most to personally gain by the product being bought. But they don't understand the internal workings, the political hurdles that they have to go through, and how do they justify this economically?
Right, and that's the beauty of B2B sales, right? Company to company sales. There are many stakeholders. Everyone has a slightly different lens, looking at it from a different angle. You can come to very different conclusions, and understanding the small number of key stakeholders that have to align is so important. We talk in sales about it's really important to understand the decision-making process. And that won't be one person, it'll be multiple. It won't be one step, it'll be multiple. And we're always prone, as the people who are selling, to get way ahead of ourselves at this point, to say, I'm at the decision maker and I'm one step away from signing the contract. And once you start getting into that mindset, you're oversimplifying a very complex decision, political process, as you say, Brian.
Yeah. Can you give us a sense of how big your deals are? Are they 5, 6, 7 figures?
In technology, they can vary quite widely, as you can imagine. A lot of businesses that I've been dealing with are relatively new to technology. And so what we're trying to do, first of all, is kind of help prove out value. So that might be a 6-figure proof of concept, minimum viable product is the term that's using technology, right? From there, you can then prove the value of machine learning, AI, and look to deploy more broadly in an organization. And that might be then lead to a 3-5 year commitment with licensing and further deployments. And of course, that's really where things get exciting, because the customer starts to see real value, and you start creating a partnership, a connection that will hopefully grow and be successful into the future.
And where do the deals either get stuck or die or start over?
Yeah, great question. If I look back over the last 2.5 years, I think the biggest learnings have come from, first of all, getting to the person within the organization who has the immediate sense of urgency. So one of the biggest thing in tech sales is you're probably not selling to the technology department of a big company. You're probably selling to someone who has a real urgent need, who you can help translate that with their technology department, their IT department, into a solution. So getting to that really critical person, it's usually a VP or more senior, maybe a VP of manufacturing, VP of engineering, these type of people who have got really deep issues that they're looking to solve. I think then once you've understood who is at the center of this, understanding that decision-making process and how you can help them navigate that with the empathy and understanding the politics and the dynamics that may go on.
And how do you keep the deal moving? Because I got to believe everyone gets excited. They hear about new technology, and certainly technical people, their eyes light up. It's a new toy.
Right.
They see the potential, but they got their full-time job to do.
Yeah. So I guess the first thing is like not becoming misaligned with the prospect, right? So what is a timeline that they feel is realistic? And they might say this is something they need yesterday.
Yeah.
And so your head,
anything.
your head goes to, okay, so this is going to be, we're going to get this done today or this week or whatever, right? But that's not the question. The question is not when you want it. Like, when is this going to actually happen? How many steps? How many people have to buy in? What's a typical procurement process? It's probably measured in weeks, not days, at least weeks. Yeah. So understanding, getting clear alignment. I think then, sales coaching and calls it different things, but having that upfront contract, that upfront agreement. Hey, at the end of this call, we're going to have a decision to make. We're going to proceed. We're going to stop and agree that this is not the right path, and we're going to be okay with that. And what is that next step? So being very thorough, and this is the diligence, the methodology, being thorough about making sure you have that upfront agreement, that this is the next step, and what's the timeline around that. And then, of course, you get more experienced in this space, and you kind of get to understand cues. So, as a salesperson, a good cue is, well, after this meeting, I want to meet, in 2 days' time, or I want to make my next available appointment. That's a positive sign. There's real momentum here. After this, let's get together in 3 weeks or a month or sometime in August.
Yeah, get back to me after Labor Day. Yeah,
that's a cue that there's something here that's probably not as urgent as maybe we thought it was, and that's a point to sort of really understand that. This is starting to sound like a Q3, Q4, 2023. This is maybe next decade. When are we thinking about this?
And as a salesperson, like AI, we have to have enough data to populate the AI and have something meaningful come out. And as a salesperson, we have to have enough experience and enough bruises where we made an enormous investment and it went nowhere. What are some of the lessons you've learned on that side?
I'm definitely on this learning curve for sure, so I don't profess to be an expert. I do think that as you get more experienced and you get more confident in your process, you pick up on those cues and you require less data. It's more about those subtle
actions,
cues, the actions that take place. So as a new salesperson, and people that I've coached and trained, definitely encourage them to gather as much data, ask as many questions as possible. And over time, you find that the questions become more effective and leaner. It might take 3 or 4 calls at the start, but over time, you get that down to conversation, and you're reading the person's body language, you're understanding some of the cues they're putting out. And probably the biggest change is not hearing what you want to hear, but hearing what they're really telling you. When they say it's going to be sometime after Labor Day, you don't scribble down, I got a deal on Labor Day.
September 10th. Yeah.
Right. You got, well, that's a long way out. Labor Day, goodness me, that's,
What else is on your table?
Yeah, exactly. So being a little bit more realistic and not jumping to conclusions helps you gather that data in a less biased way.
Yeah. And have you found a way of applying your engineering rigor to sales? Because engineering, it's all about, analysis, planning, measure twice, cut once.
Yeah, I really wasn't that good of an engineer though, Brian.
You were wing it.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, engineers are inherently as good as the data they're provided with. Like, my joke is the smartest person in the room is always the engineer, unless they haven't got any data. Then they're like, I don't know either, right? So you do need data, and I guess it's inherent. Like, you understand that. What are my leading indicators here, right? So a sales process typically has an average sales cycle, average sales deal size. And I'm trying to think about, as an engineer, what's the early indicator of a successful quarter, of a successful month, of a successful year. And it's not what deals closed last week. It's the upfront stuff. It's the cold outreach. It's the prospects. It's the lead generation. It's how we're building a successful pipeline, and how effective each salesperson is being in those early indicators, those lead indicators. So I guess it's inherent that, as any sales leader would, you look at that data, and maybe as an engineer that comes a little bit more intuitively, perhaps.
And when you're looking at a deal that your team or individual feels is really good, there's lots of excitement, how do you determine if it's a deal or kind of a science experiment, or people just want to learn because AI is exciting, we want to learn about it?
That's a great point, Brian, because AI does tend to lend itself to excitement and the risk of a science project, right? Because it's really cool to do something in this space. I guess 2 things I'd say. One is, really understand the value of it to the person, or the individual, or the customer, the business. If they can't articulate back to you as the salesperson, the value is X, that's a clue that maybe this is sort of a bridge to nowhere, or not a longer deal, longer term relationship. Second thing is to ask the question, hey, if this proof of value is successful, if this initial engagement is successful, what comes next? And if the answer is, I don't know, I haven't thought that far ahead, again, that's a warning sign that this may be a short-term, my boss told me to use AI, I'm going to go do something in AI,
Check.
right? Which I think, is not too far away from reality. In some cases, everyone knows that data, machine learning, and AI is an enormously powerful technology. And the danger is that you try and use it where it's not necessary or not appropriate, or you're using it because you've got to use it, right? And that's the science project.
And when you're looking at the forecast, how do you coach your reps? What questions do you ask them to, kind of peel the onion back? What's the business problem? Who's the person? Why are they doing it now versus later? Things like that? Or
yeah, I think so. I think we try and do, and I do believe strongly in sort of pre-call, post-call reviews, and understanding what we expect to happen, what we hope to achieve, and what really has occurred. And those touch points can be really a really effective sales coaching moment. because coaching is way more effective in my experience when it's wrapped around a real world
Yes.
experience.
Yeah, that
Otherwise
people
it's very
care
like,
about. Yeah.
yeah, and so it brings it really to reality. Hey, when what did the prospect say when you said X? They said this. Okay, well, what did you feel like when they said that? Just understanding it. So a lot of pre-call, post-call strategy work to bring coaching into the moment and to make it more real.
Yeah. And where would you like to take your career?
That's a great question. I'm currently in a process of evaluating some new opportunities myself, and I think that for me, I want to stay with the customer. I want to stay with the problem solving. I have a passion for technology and believe in the power of a lot of what we're working on. So sales leadership has just been an amazing experience for me. As I say, I kind of got the opportunity a little bit out of the blue, but it's been just such a rich experience. So I think sales leadership and developing and coaching other salespeople is where I really would like to continue. I feel like I'm at the bottom of a mountain. There's so much more I can do, so much more I can learn. That's the runway in front of me, and I find it really rewarding when a salesperson who you're coaching has a success. It's every bit as rewarding as when you personally have a deal closed. So I love that feeling.
And is that something you've always had? Because I think that is one of the key differences between great sales leaders and okay sales leaders. Because, we typically get into sales because we're money motivated, or we're sick of doing what we used to do, and then we
Yeah.
get into leadership because, we're pushed into it, or we're pulled into it, or we think it's the next step in our career. And then we find out it's very different than selling.
Yeah. Well, I've been in different leadership roles for probably over 10, 12 years. So I've had teams working with me for a while. I think that it's not for everyone. Clearly, leadership is a different animal again. But the sales leadership in particular, I found particularly rewarding because there's always a personal element to it. There's personal success that you're celebrating. There's also success that you can take from your team being successful, and you're all on this learning curve together, which is it's just a rewarding experience, probably more so than in a purely technical discipline like engineering or accounting, I imagine.
And I see you volunteer at the Dyslexia Institute. Is that something that you've had or have?
Yeah, I am dyslexic. I was assessed at university, so kind of late in my life. Yeah, so I'm 42, and so back in the time when I was at school, it wasn't something that was routinely assessed. I went to school in the UK; it wasn't routinely assessed, and it wasn't until I got to university and I met a couple of other people who were dyslexic, and they were assessed that I kind of got assessed. I'm mildly dyslexic, and what you learn by knowing that is what you're good at, what you're not so good at, and how to deal with it. And so I volunteer at the Indiana Institute for Dyslexia because today we're in a much better place. Children are routinely assessed at public and private schools, and that allows them to understand more and get educated about dyslexia. And I'm very, very passionate about it because I had a lot of struggles during school, as you can imagine. And as a sales leader and someone in leadership, I want people to know that having someone dyslexic in your organization is an attribute, because just like any team performs better when it's got diversity, when it's got different ideas, someone with dyslexia will bring a dyslexic thinking to your organization, and that is so powerful. It is a tremendous asset. And I just want the kids who are maybe struggling a little bit today or finding some things more difficult to know that they have effectively a superpower that they should be really proud of and nurture, because it's going to put them in a great position in the future.
And do you think it's helped you in sales?
Undoubtedly, yeah. You're effectively talking about a slightly different wiring of the brain,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
If you asked me to read a book and come back to you with my insights, it would take me some time, Brian, and my insights would probably not make a lot of sense to you. But if you give me a problem or a puzzle to solve, then I'm really effective in that place, and that's what a lot of dyslexics are. So problem solving, understanding complexity, visualizing, very visual thinkers. It's a wonderful skill set, and it's really something that we should be, raising up in our organizations and making people more aware of.
Well, that's it, because now it's understood in school. When I was in school, it was looked at as you were slow.
Right, right.
And it was like, but you knew you're not like, no, I get the point. I just see the letters different than you. That's
Right.
all.
Absolutely, absolutely. I found, so I was fortunate. I got through my schooling, just about got to university on my fingertips, and then I found university easier than high school because there was like a freedom of how you learn. There was different ways you could approach it. I then was fortunate enough to go on to do a PhD. I found that even more enjoyable and perhaps in some ways easier than an undergraduate, because a PhD, a doctorate, is about solving a problem that's not been solved before. And you've got much greater degrees of freedom, and it's really a problem solving course. And I just loved it. It was just wonderful. And so again, if you're someone who struggles in elementary school, middle school, high school, don't be put off by the fact that that's difficult, because that's a very constrained way of learning that, in the best will in the world, is designed for a certain way of learning. And you might actually find you're even more effective as you go into your later education, into your career. In the real world, dyslexic thinking is an incredibly powerful asset.
Cool. Hey, Noel, I really appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
I'm on LinkedIn. My name's Noel Hopkins. Feel free to follow me there. And Brian, I really appreciate your time. This has been wonderful. I've a long time listener, first time caller. So thank you so much for your time today, Brian.